Today on Talk with Claude, we explore governing ourselves with Rob and the Pagé family 8 years after the making of the documentary Ungrip.
So we can encourage more people to acknowledge the truth of what these relationships look like, reconcile our relationship with the Nehuan people in Treaty 6, and start to honor the treaty and return to the land and look after the land and each other in peace rather than continuing the war. Against one another. So part of this journey now is to then start teaching people, okay, all of these things that we've been depending on for at least 150 years since the formation of Canada as a, well, quote unquote country. That's a whole other topic. Everything that we've been founding our lives on is a lie. And so now we're back to, okay, how do we deal with reconciling this relationship and working through the lies that we've been told by the people that are supposedly, quote unquote, governing us, and reconcile that so that we can not only heal from all these lies and the violence and the manipulations that have taken place in our life, but how do we then return back to the earth and help people make that transition so that we're not causing even more chaos or harm or hardship. How do we make that transition so that we can encourage more people to acknowledge the truth of what these relationships look like, reconcile our relationship with the Nehuan people in Treaty 6, and start to honor the treaty and return to the land and look after the land and each other in peace rather than continuing the war.
Yeah, and I can see people being afraid of revisiting that because they don't know what the outcome will be. But when you go down and look at it, I think everybody would benefit from a different relationship to the land and to the people that were there.
Well, and you know, and for what I've been finding is that the ones that are against us the most are the ones that have been benefiting the most. So the people that have a lot of wealth or influence or you know, ownership of land and titles and privileges, you know, those are the ones that are scared the most because they're afraid that they're going to lose all their worldly possessions when they, you know, walk away from the fictional constructs and start walking a spiritual path.
Well, yeah, and you know, I can recall when I was younger, before building this house here, and even today, what seems abundantly clear, especially in Canada, when there's so many open spaces, and you're thinking, why should I, you know, be paying through the teeth for the rest of my life for a chunk of land as defined by the state, when there's all this empty land all around me that nobody seems to be using, you know?
Well, and all that is just an example of just how much of a slave you are to their feudal empire.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, when you don't see, when first of all you can't see outside of that, and it always makes me laugh nowadays because we have here in my little hometown of Revelstoke here, we constantly butt up against this problem of affordable housing, and because we're a resort town, right? And other cities and towns are going through the same thing, and people look to government to solve this problem. Yep. And my answer is always the same. I said, well, disempower the government to create the problem, and the problem will solve itself, because I've known people that have gone out in the bush and built their own little shack. And of course, if you think that it's going to get torn down by the RCMP, you're not going to put thousands of hours into building this beautiful place. You make it fairly rustic. But basically, they're keeping the people enslaved within these boundaries that don't need to be there, and then they cling to their saviors for building affordable housing with the money that they stole through taxation. It's insane. And another aspect of it that I haven't seen a whole lot through my research, but I came up with the conclusion as I was heavily involved in creating this alternative currency exchange locally here. And I had some communications with Tim Jenkins in South Africa, who started a World Wide Web system of community exchange. And that was around 2012 that I got in contact with him. And as you go down that rabbit hole of how money's created and how it functions, you quickly realize the importance to the state of land tax, because that's how they get people starving for these, otherwise useless, valueless dollar bills that they have everyone chasing. But if somebody's putting a gun to your head and kicking you out of your home and land if you don't pay up in that form, then you're going to want to collect it, right? And that's what gives supposed value to our whole money system. The minute that land taxation system falls apart, then the whole money system falls apart too. And I think people with a lot of money would certainly fear that, but I think for the most part, that's the bars that people fail to see. That's the bars of the cages.
Yeah, and their whole system is based on coercion and violence, and their claim of having a monopoly on that. And to me, that's violates the very premise of what a healthy relationship should look like. Healthy relationships should not be founded on violence and coercion. Even they themselves would say, if you're in a violent relationship, then call us for help and we'll help you get out of the violent relationship. But when it comes to their own violent relationship, they absolutely refuse to acknowledge and recognize their own violence. And so that's part of why I find that the core foundation for doing any of this work is to heal oneself and declare peace, because we can't do this if we're continuing to use violence to support our actions. And peace is absolutely mandatory in order for us to do this. And that requires a tremendous amount of work to heal ourselves and to be able to see and acknowledge what healthy relationships look like, no matter whether they're physical relationships with other people or Mother Earth, or using these fictional constructs to engage in violence against other people. And I had this argument even with some friends of mine just a little while ago. Even the use of money, fiat currency, like Canadian dollars, is violent. Voting is violent.
Absolutely.
And people have a real hard time acknowledging it, because they're not directly involved in the violence, but using these methods is a violent act, because down the chain it harms somebody, and somebody engages in violence on your behalf as a result of you surrendering or granting your power to the state to act on your behalf. And for me, with all the work that I did, I couldn't justify that, and I couldn't allow that to happen. So I had to withdraw from all of that based on my own spiritual beliefs, through my own healing and research, to figure out that all of these constructs are part of the war machine, and my own participation meant I'm responsible for the violence and the death and the coercion that happens as a result. And I couldn't do that anymore. I had to say no.
Yeah, and my own journey led me to the exact same conclusion. And what I find sad is that I know a lot of really well-meaning people that don't see it. They don't understand why I don't go out there and vote anymore. But I see through that, and it just doesn't resonate with me anymore, because I see the end result and I see what it means. If I enter into relationships with people and our actions are done from a standpoint of both our consent, then we can't really go wrong. That's a really good basis for a relationship. But if a group of people just gets together and votes for this thing to happen and for this money to be taken from this person, given to this person, to for the other person to build or to do this work, then there's a definite lack of consent, or at least a lack of consulting about consent that happens, and it just doesn't resonate with me anymore. Now, on that note, I noticed that in recent times you've started putting together some workshops for people to work on their relationships back on your land. Um, and I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about that and what the future of that process is.
Yeah, it's a little up in the air right now. I had an encounter with part of my tribe that violated my spiritual beliefs and my boundaries, and so I said no to it. But I'm kind of humming and hawing, where I'm at right now in regards to holding retreats and that sort of thing. But what we were doing is holding weekend retreats out here, and they're actually at the 4-H Center as we speak right now, finishing up a retreat there too. But the whole premise of what we're doing is having spirit-centric, full submersion protocols where we help people through the healing process, but it's very much escalated. So I've found miracles unfolding where people are doing work within a weekend or a few weeks that took me months or even years to accomplish. So the acceleration of the healing process is on the order of tenfold, and it's just astounding at what spirit is being able to do. So the healing I went through was very much focused on emotional and the intellect, but this healing covers the emotional, mental, physical, and spiritual. It's very holistic, and we dive in very deep in a safe, sacred circle that allows people to kind of surrender to the process and really work through stuff in a safe way. And as a result, they can then find a much faster, more holistic healing journey. And I've seen people that were a week before the retreat were found overdosed and passed out in a park, completely turned their life around through the weekend and have been going since. And I've witnessed that multiple times through the retreats that we're holding. So, and these are people that are dealing with tremendous trauma and addictions and that kind of stuff. And by taking this holistic approach, we're helping them to do some profound healing so that they can then start walking their spiritual path and finding their purpose in life and walking forward so that they can then make the changes that they need to make in their life. And so that's really helped in regards to dealing with some of the core foundations that are preventing these foundational changes from happening in our society and our world, because we're all so traumatized by the violence and the colonization process that we've all gone through. And the Nehuan people and others across the country, they've been dealing with colonization for 500 years, but my ancestors, our ancestors were colonized, 1,000 years ago or 1,500 years ago. Our ancestors are indigenous to this land just as theirs are. It's just our ancestors came from Europe. Others came from China or Japan or Africa or South America, Central America. Like, we're all indigenous to this planet. And as a result of us sitting and acknowledging that this colonization process has caused so much trauma and separated our families and broke up our tribes, we don't have the infrastructure in place that we used to in order to have the support and look after our youth and heal and look after those that are sick. And so, everybody's dependent on corporations now to do that. But if we can start rebuilding our tribes and reestablishing sacred healing circles and, allow multiple generations to start living together, and which, provides all kinds of benefits of knowledge transfer and support and help and, all that kind of stuff, then there's no need for old folks' homes and schools and, foster homes or grocery stores or any of that shit. We can provide it all for ourselves through healthy tribal living arrangements. But rebuilding the tribes is going to be a tremendous challenge, and this is part of the work that we're doing, is to try to rebuild those tribes and rebuild those relationships so that we can decolonize ourselves and return back to a tribal way of life that supports our spirit and foundations of how we're supposed to be living.
Absolutely, and I know in my own life, working through childhood traumas and my wife's childhood has certainly been key to fixing our relationship and um, allowing our spirit to act upon the body to create the life that we've created now and that we continue along our path. So, are there any further workshops, or what can we expect from your plans in the next while?
Well, my plan right now is to write my next book. I have a book that's in the works right now. I'm also working on a plan to help the Kiyuan Cree Nation to establish a holistic foundation for building sustainable homes on their reserve that takes a lot of the stuff that we talked about into consideration, so that we can help empower them to empower themselves and be completely self-sufficient and return to the land and rebuild their tribes and health and spirituality and all their customs and traditions and their language and all that kind of stuff is all kind of built into this project that we're helping them out with. And that's kind of going to be my focus over the next little while.
That's great. And where can we follow your work? I know you were quite active on Facebook at once. You started writing on Steemit. And go ahead.
Yeah, I have about a year and a half of work on Steem, over 500 posts. So if you visit steemit.com/the @ WWF, my blog is there for all to see. I've stopped writing on that a few weeks ago in order to focus on my book and to focus on this work. And so when this work is done, then I may return to blogging again. But the Steem platform, my blog on Steem, will probably be the best place to go, as I have my book on there. I have videos. I've done workshops that are recorded. They're up on Steem as well. So if anybody wants a really good, well-rounded knowledge dump, that's the place to go. About a year and a half ago, well, just before I started blogging, I was getting sick. I've been dealing with cancer for the last little while, and my memory was going, and so I decided to blog and just do a memory dump and just write all I could before I lost it all. And just as an update, I'm going through recovery, and I've recovered, 80-90% of my strength and my mental ability as a result of the holistic protocols I've been doing to deal with the illness my vessel is going through. And so that's why I've decided to write my next book and continue my work, because I've been doing quite well with my recovery.
Well, I'm certainly happy to hear that you're doing quite well. It's a bit of a shock to know that your health has been giving you that much problems. Certainly, the cancer word is not something that anyone ever wants to hear. You also held a website for a while. Now, I have to tell you a story. Going through some of the documents that I had to go through to prepare for this interview, I was looking through your book, and I came across the link suggesting donations could be given through the Conscious Self Governance .ca website.
Yeah, I don't have that one anymore.
No, I felt like a pilgrim walking along a dirt road in the middle of nowhere, and who finds this, diamond ring on the ground, and just has the urge to pick it up for safekeeping and return it to the owner. So there's no. So I came across that, and I clicked on the link and saw that was no longer in use. I actually picked up the domain name this morning.
Oh,
because to me that had some. I visited that website back in the days, and there's some value there that I can't seem to detach myself from, because that was one of the access points that we had to back in the days, and there's so much that I have in connection to that I just couldn't leave it on the ground. I don't know if the sentiment's really coming through, but anyways, I have it for safekeeping should you need it or should you want to do something with that. And I'm just putting it out there, no obligation on your part, but I just felt that maybe you had let that go, because obviously there's money and time involved in maintaining that, and maybe that was no longer possible for you.
Yeah, the thing with websites and that kind of stuff is you need fiat currency to keep them running, and my work has been to reduce the amount of fiat currency I need, and through the years I've reduced that by 90%. So we're living on a fraction of what we used to live on, and as a result, I can't keep the the websites and all that kind of stuff going, because the donations just aren't there to support it. So I let it go, and that's one of the reasons why I wrote on Steam, is because I don't need to pay for that. I actually was able to earn cryptocurrency and support my family for a couple of years by writing on that platform using cryptos rather than fiat currency. And whatever you want to do with the website, it's yours. Do whatever as you please. But if people want to donate to my work, the last post that I put on Steam has contact information. They can contact me, and we can work something out. Okay. I don't have a bank account or any of that kind of stuff, but my wife still has a single bank account. She's stayed in the system while I'm testing all this stuff outside of the system, so there's still a way for us to interact minimally through my wife, because we still have a phone and internet so we can communicate with people. But if the shit hit the fan, all that would get turned off and we would disappear.
Yeah, and so I'll hang on to that for now, and I have it, so that's all you can do when you find something that doesn't belong to you. I paid for it, but that's like the land, right? I've got a title, but in spirit that you came up with that name and you had an idea behind that, and I totally understand the physical restrictions that had you let it go. But I just wanted you to know that it's still within your reach should you ever feel the need to. And if you want to send me the links where people can help fund your work, that would be great. I know a lot of things have changed over those 8 to 10 years on the internet. I personally use the patreon.com website, and I accept donations for this podcast for me to keep bringing out great content. So those websites now do exist, and it's an extra challenge, obviously, if you don't have a bank account. But yeah, so I just thought I'd put it out there, and it's been absolutely wonderful talking with you, Rob. Any final words?
Oh boy, final words. Yeah, if people are interested in my work, Ungrip, the video that Ben Stewart made back in 2011, like you said, it was 8 years ago now, how time flies, is a good introduction to the work that I do. But, like we've been talking about, 8 years, lots changed. I've done a lot of growth and changing myself. I wrote the book Graduating Life with Honors a few years ago. I've created a PDF, and I've been giving the book away for free. But we also have a link on our storefront, which is through homesteaderscoop.com. Our storefront's called Tawatna Spirit, and in there's a link to download the book for just a small fee. So that's one way of supporting us. I also provide spiritual mentorship. There's a link there as well for that, for people that are looking for kind of like a mentor to help them work through a lot of the topics and ideas and concepts that we've been talking about today. I've been making myself available to help people through that. I've helped people, deal with child protective services and, preventing smart meters from being installed in their homes and, that kind of stuff. But I do it all in a peaceful way, and by, agreeing with thy adversary, we put the burden back on those that are making claims rather than us getting into arguments and going to war. And that's been a very successful, productive methodology for dealing with the state and those who are engaged in war. And it pisses people off, it angers people, but that's their path and their journey. And I found great success in taking that approach, and so I explore that in my blog and in my book. And I'm willing to spend time and teach people this process, but I do require that they do the work, and that work involves going through the documentary and reading the book and starting their own healing journey. And I'm not willing to waste my time on people that are at war and just want to win conflicts. I'm interested in helping people find peace within themselves and interacting with others in a peaceful way, and that requires great health and healing and healthy boundaries and those kind of things, and that's the kind of interactions I'm looking to help people establish.
Okay, and on my part, I'd like to invite you to come back to the show. And what I was thinking is we could go through graduating life with honors, kind of chapter by chapter and commentary, and without it being so much of a spoiler alert, but just having some extra commentary to explain or to go through the book to intrigue. I don't know how you feel about that. And then when you come out with your next book, certainly I very much enjoy doing the same with you.
Actually, that idea sounds exciting and intriguing. I would love to give it a shot and see how it turns out. I think that's a wonderful idea.
That's great. So yeah, let's keep in touch, and I wish you the best recovery, a full recovery, and that will have you to guide and to inspire for many years to come. Thank you so much for showing up on the show.
Thanks, Claude. I greatly appreciate the opportunity to share this with people, and I thank Creator and Mother Earth for the air that we breathe and the nourishment for our bodies and the experiences that we have. And Creator has provided us with another new day for us to share and live and grow, and I appreciate that very much. And I extend my thoughts and prayers to you and your family, your wife, especially as we take these opportunities to heal ourselves and to grow and to stand as stewards of the earth and help one another. And may Spirit provide us with prosperity, peace, and love as we work through these trying times. And I thank you for this talk and for the opportunities to share these ideas with people.
Peace be with you.
Peace be with you as well.